Palm trees are great subjects to draw, but one problem can be that whenever we draw one, that as we progress it, it ends up looking more and more like 1,000 palm trees that have been in the background of cartoons that we've watched all our lives. Is this a problem you've had when you draw palm trees? Where does it come from, and how can we get around it and draw palm trees that are credible trees and which capture all the individuality of a particular tree?
But really, is there anything wrong with this if we all know it's a palm tree? It just depends what we're wanting to achieve with our drawing. But if we're wanting it to look like a particular palm tree, it doesn't. It's a generic cartoon palm tree that stands in for all palm trees. Here's the palm tree I used as my reference, but there's a couple of fundamental errors I did with this. The first is, if we look at this palm tree, then we can see that branches come out to the sides and to the front and at angles. So if we were to look down on this palm tree and that was the trunk, fronds come out in all directions. But in our cartoon tree, if this is our trunk, the fronds only come out in a straight line parallel to our viewing. If we were to move slightly, the fronds would be shaped like a fan. Our palm tree would be very two-dimensional. And part of the reason we get this effect is that we have drawn every frond the same, as if we're looking at it side on. When in fact, if we look at our reference, we can see that there are some fronds which are side on, but there are others that we see which are actually edge on. And there are some, such as these ones in the front, which are twisted, and we see different parts of the frond differently. And if we want to draw lifelike palm trees, we need to capture all of those things. If we're not going to draw this, what are we going to draw? We do need to have a look at it and just to observe the things that will help direct the accuracy of our drawing. The most important thing to note is the position of various fronds. There's a frond that comes up closest to us here, just going off to the side in a bit of an arc shape there. There's another one that comes up here and comes forward similarly. This one here, which is also relatively close to us, but really is at 180 degrees to us. There's another couple here that we're seeing edge on. And it's important to note which ones are closest because we're going to see more detail of those and they will cover detail of the fronds behind. The other thing to notice is what the shape of the fronds are. In life, different fronds and different positions hang differently. And the third thing is that the lighting of the fronds is different. If we look at these fronds further towards the back, they're almost black, as if they're a silhouette. And yet other fronds are being struck by the light and are being lit up to the degree that we can see the colour. Although this is a black and white drawing, we want to reflect the shade and the shadow. This palm frond is also one that's basically in light. It is a real tangle in here. I'm trying to reflect that at this point. There's another frond up here that's also arching similar to this one. And in a design such as this, negative space can work as well. Colouring in the shadows rather than trying to draw the shape is often a great way to get the effect that we want. A real palm tree is a lot messier than our cartoon one, so we do also want to capture a sense of the messiness of all these fronds. It's really important not to let these become too perfect, these fronds and their shapes. One thing that we can see is that little individual fronds, these parts here can end up flopping down, and this part catches the light or the shade, and so it's good to draw a few of those and to highlight them. We don't need to draw all the tangle that comes behind them. I'm trying to capture the sense of the shape of these fronds And I'll add tangle around them and behind them at the end, which will tie all these sometimes little separate unattached parts together. There's no point trying to draw complete fronds at this stage because we can't see them. And of course we need to make sure that the fronds do all end up though attaching at the top of the trunk. So in drawing these fronds, I don't start here and work up. I actually start at the end where I want them to finish, and then I look at where I want to bring them in. Now this frond is pretty much in shade. And you can see here that rather than being exact, it's the effect of the fronds we want to capture. So this one needs to sort of be about level there. Again, it's often better to start the frond or the branch, if it's a tree, at the edge and then connect it back to the trunk. That way we know for sure it's going to end the way we want in the place we want. We're getting close. The final thing I want to do is just try to establish a little more darkness in some parts. Clearly what we're doing here is we're drawing the effect of the light and dark and the shadow and the fronds. It's all way too complicated and we're never actually going to draw them all, but we do want to suggest enough line, enough detail that there's a credible representation. Now, sadly, my palm tree was growing behind a tall hedge, so I don't actually have any detail of the trunk. And of course, this is the sort of subject where it can be hard to know where to stop. But it is helpful at times to stand back and continue to be sure we're drawing the overall effect and don't get bogged down in detail. You may have noticed that I changed my scale once I started drawing. This first frond that I drew is a lot smaller than it should be for the scale I drew the rest of the drawing. And so looking at this, if I were drawing this again, I'd be sure to, if anything, err on the side of drawing this front frond larger and have even less line work in it so that it would be a lighter shape right in the center, just to add some contrast to the tangle of lines that we have. And the challenge in this is always to not have so much of a tangle of lines that we fail to be able to work out the form of the fronds and of the tree. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. And of course, palm trees are yet another example of the problem that we face, that we don't observe our subject carefully enough. Instead, we have a quick look and we think, oh yeah, I know what that looks like. And so we draw what we know it looks like, which is based on all sorts of things in our past. Probably a lot of what was in the background of the cartoons we watched when we were kids. And because we think we know what it is, even before we see it, it stops us observing what we need to observe to draw it accurately. And we end up with cartoons. If you'd like to have a go at drawing palm trees, I've got a couple of photos I'll put on my community page and you can have a go at drawing them. Of course, palm trees come with fronds of all shapes and sizes, not just these long, shaggy ones, but round, paddle-shaped ones, all manner of shapes, sizes, and edges. You may think of Australia as being the land of gum trees, but in fact we have an enormous Pacific Ocean coastline that's covered in palm trees. So we certainly have the chance for lots of experience drawing them. So have a go, and if you draw them, have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.